Imagine this, you're sitting in a prison cell, minutes away from the gas chamber, when the governor finally decides to save your life. The phone rings inside the prison. A guard rushes toward the warden with a message. Hold the execution. But by the time he reaches the gas chamber, the cyanide pellets have already dropped. That really happened. And the man strapped to that chair was a 29-year-old accounting student named Burton W. Abbott, convicted of kidnapping and murdering a 14-year-old schoolgirl called Stephanie Bryan. Tonight, we're going to walk through the case that terrified California in the 1950s and still divides people today. Was Abbott a cold-blooded killer who almost got away with murder? Or was he a victim of circumstance, executed by a system that refused to admit it might be wrong? Let's go back to the beginning. It's April 28, 1955, Berkeley, California. 14-year-old Stephanie Bryan leaves Willard Junior High School like she has done 100 times before. She's a good student, responsible, the kind of kid who doesn't just disappear. On the way home, she stops with a friend for a donut, looks at some pets in a shop window, laughs, chats, lives a completely normal teenage afternoon. Then she heads toward the shortcut. To save a few minutes, Stephanie usually cuts through a quiet path near the fancy Claremont Hotel. It's a small risk in most people's minds, trees, a parking area, a bit isolated but nothing dramatic. She walks toward the path. She is never seen alive again. When Stephanie doesn't come home, her parents know immediately that something is wrong. This is not a kid who runs away. Her father calls the police that same afternoon. Within hours, Berkeley turns into a search grid. Officers, neighbors, volunteers combing the hills, checking ravines, knocking on doors. For days, nothing. Then a small clue, one of Stephanie's textbooks, is found miles away, on a rural road. That's it. No body, no suspect, no ransom note. Just a missing girl, and a city starting to feel the first crack of fear. Now we meet Burton Abbott. On paper, he doesn't look like a monster. He's 27, married, with a young son. Thin, bookish, recovering from tuberculosis. He's a student at UC Berkeley, studying accounting. He lives in Alameda with his wife, Georgia, and his mother, Elsie, in a house with a basement and a dirt floor. To his neighbors, he's quiet. Not particularly friendly. Not particularly threatening. Just there. But a few months after Stephanie disappears, his entire life will get ripped open because of what his wife is about to find. It's July. Georgia Abbott goes down to the basement to look for an old costume for a party. She's digging through boxes, moving clothes, doing something completely ordinary. And then she sees it. A red purse, nothing special, until she opens it and finds an ID card. The name on the card doesn't belong to anyone in her family. It says Stephanie Bryan. In that moment, the missing girl from the newspapers is no longer just a sad story from another city. She is in Georgia's basement. Georgia calls the police. When they arrive, they don't just find a purse. As they dig into the dirt floor, they start pulling out more of Stephanie's belongings. Her glasses, a bra, school books, other small personal items. The kind of things a girl doesn't just leave somewhere. The basement of the Abbott house has now become a crime scene. The quiet, skinny accounting student becomes suspect number one. There's one more piece of land connected to the Abbotts, a remote cabin in Trinity County, hundreds of miles away. Police and reporters head out there. Using bloodhounds and following the terrain around the cabin, searchers start sweeping the area. And near that lonely cabin, in a shallow grave under brush and dirt, they find a body. It's badly decomposed, but the clothing, the physical evidence, the location, everything points to one person. 14-year-old Stephanie Bryan. Her skull is fractured. Her underwear is tied around her neck. The official story will be attempted rape followed by murder. News of the discovery explodes across California. The narrative writes itself. A vulnerable schoolgirl, a hidden basement full of her things, and her body buried near the suspect's family cabin. Almost overnight, in the public's eyes, Burton Abbott transforms from ordinary student to evil predator. But here's where it gets complicated. Abbott insists he's innocent. He tells a different version of events, that he's being framed, that someone else put the girl's things in his basement, that anybody could have gone in and out when the place was used as a polling station. His mother, Elsie, swears he couldn't have done it. She will defend him until the day she dies. Abbott's physical condition becomes part of the defense. He'd had part of a lung and several ribs removed because of tuberculosis. His lawyer argues, this guy weighs around 60 kilos, he's thin and weak. How could he kidnap a girl, kill her, carry her body into the hills, and dig a grave in rough terrain? The prosecution doesn't care. They have fibers and hairs allegedly matching Stephanie in Abbott's car. They have Stephanie's things pulled from his basement. They have witnesses who say they saw a man struggling with a girl near the area where Stephanie disappeared, and some of them think it might have been Abbott. None of this is 100% clean, perfect evidence. But emotionally, it's devastating. The trial begins in late 1955, and it's a circus. Newspapers cover it almost every day. Headlines scream about the schoolgirl murder. Photos of the shy-looking Abbott sitting in court are printed next to pictures of Stephanie's smiling face. Prosecutors tell a simple, brutal story. Abbott spotted Stephanie walking alone. He took her, tried to assault her, killed her when she resisted, hid her belongings in his basement, and then buried her body near the cabin where he felt safe. They don't need to prove every detail, they just need the jury to feel that this is the only story that makes sense. The defense pushes back. They hammer the lack of direct eyewitnesses. They question the forensic work. They point out that no one actually saw Abbott with Stephanie. They argue that the body was too decomposed to prove rape. They repeat again and again that he is too sick and too small to commit such a physically demanding crime. Then Abbott himself takes the stand. He speaks softly, denies everything, says the evidence has been planted, calls it a monstrous frame-up. For days, the jury watches this pale, quiet man insist that he is not the monster the newspapers say he is. And then they go to deliberate. They are out for days. When they return, they deliver their verdict, guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping with bodily harm. The judge sentences him to death in the gas chamber. Appeals follow. They all fail. By March 1957, the date is set. The place, San Quentin State Prison. The method, gas chamber. This is where we return to the moment we started with. Execution day. Abbott wakes up knowing it is probably his last morning. Outside, the press is waiting. Inside, his lawyers are still fighting. Filing last-minute appeals, arguing that he didn't receive a fair trial, that the evidence was too weak, that there is at least reasonable doubt. The courts say no. So his lawyer goes for the last card he has left, the governor. California's governor at the time, Goodwin Knight, is not even on land that morning. He's out at sea on a Navy ship. Contacting him is a nightmare. Finally, as the clock ticks down toward Abbott's scheduled execution time, the lawyer manages to get through. The governor listens. He agrees. Fine, a stay of execution, 1 more hour, 1 more chance. The problem? Paper and phone lines move slower than cyanide gas. Back at San Quentin, the execution team is already preparing. Abbott is led from his cell to the gas chamber. He's strapped into the chair. The chamber is sealed. Witnesses watch from behind the glass. At almost the same moment, in an office not far away, the phone starts to ring. It's the governor's secretary calling the warden, "Hold the execution." But by the time the message reaches the gas chamber, the lever has already been pulled. 16 pellets of cyanide drop into a vat of sulfuric acid. The gas begins to rise. Whatever anyone thinks about his guilt or innocence, there is no stopping what's about to happen inside that sealed room. Abbott dies while the governor's staff are still on the phone trying to save him. 2 minutes, that's how close it was. So who was Burton Abbott? A calculated predator who left just enough evidence behind to be caught? Or a sick, unlucky man buried by circumstantial evidence, public fear, and a justice system that cared more about closure than certainty? We will probably never know for sure. Stephanie Bryan's family never got a full explanation of what really happened in those missing hours, and Abbott took his version of the story to the grave. What we do know is this: a girl disappeared on her way home from school. Her belongings ended up hidden in a stranger's basement. Her body was buried near his family's cabin, and when the state decided to kill him for it, the only thing more frightening than the crime itself was how close the system came to changing its mind just seconds too late. Tell me in the comments, if you were on that jury, with this evidence, this story, in that era, would you have voted to execute Burton Wilbur Abbott? Or would you have held out and lived with the possibility that a killer might walk free? You decide.